Welcome, everyone. It is an incredible honor to invite and host Stacy Ennis on Grit Machine DNA. For those of you who have read the book or learning about the book or my website, Stacy Ennis played a profound role in the development of both the book, the story, and frankly, my own development as I approached the book and my outlook on what I'm doing now. So it's incredibly humbling and an honor for me to have Stacy on the podcast. Stacy, welcome.
Thank you, David. It's an honor to be here.
So who is Stacy Ennis?
Oh my. I mean, I knew you were going to ask that question, but somehow I still don't have a perfect answer for you. I mean, we're all complicated, right? I think for me, I grew up in a very homogenous, like one track society, and that, we were taught to be a certain thing in life. And I've definitely taken a very different path. So today, I'm a location independent entrepreneur. I get to guide future impact makers on their journeys to uncover their core message and their unique story and make a profound impact on the world. And I get to do that from Portugal, where I live with my family, my 2 kids, my husband, and life is good. Can't complain.
Awesome. What does being location independent mean, Stacy?
I think everybody has to define that for themselves, but to me it means that we're not nomadic. It's not like the digital nomad thing where people have a laptop and they live places a month at a time. Our kids need stability, and so for us that means that we get to choose where we live, and right now we choose for that to be in Portugal. And it also means to me that we never feel a lack of choice, that we're able to make decisions about our lives that we get to fully own. And we've had that play out a number of times. We first moved to Thailand. That was our dream that we held for a long time, and that didn't work out. And for a number of reasons. And we were able to then choose to leave and to come to Portugal. And so for me, it's that freedom and that choice that really defines location independence.
All right, so we're going to unwind a little bit because there's a lot to unpack here about you, Stacy. Where were you born? What was early life like?
I was born in Boise, Idaho, which is a lovely, lovely place. It's currently, I think, like the hottest city in the US. I mean, it's growing the fastest, and house prices are ballooning the fastest as well. Um, and I had a great life. I have 2 great parents. But I think anybody who's been to Idaho knows that it's not diverse at all. I mean, I think when I was growing up, it was probably in the 90 something percentile white and very affluent. I wouldn't say that we were wealthy growing up, but I never really wanted for anything. I grew up in a Christian school that I don't think really upheld the values of Christianity at all. And so that was not actually a positive experience for me. And I read a lot. And I think because I read so much, I was able to kind of go beyond where I was and wonder about the broader world and what was possible. And could I make some different choices than this life that had been kind of unfolded before me? And I just needed to take those particular steps to achieve a life that didn't really excite me. So yeah, I wouldn't say that I had a great childhood. I didn't have some of the challenges that other people face, but I was unhappy, I think, with what was ahead of me. So
Interesting. What were your early years like, and who defined who you are today? Who helped you to define who you are today?
my early years, really early years, from a very young age, I started getting into a lot of trouble at school. And I was constantly being held after school, meetings with my parents, threatening to kick me out, just constant until I was probably in ninth grade. So starting in second grade up through ninth grade. And I think a lot of that was just me not feeling like I fit into the Catholic school that I went to and then the Christian school that I went to. Um, and it was just a lot of kind of tension and distress. And I think looking back, I didn't do well in a lot of my classes. And it wasn't because I wasn't capable, it was just because I think I was a bit bored and I was unhappy in the environment that I was in, which was very like shaming of women. We were taught that our bodies were to be not, we were not to be seen beyond like our godliness, and that we couldn't, if we felt beautiful, that that was almost like a sin. And so there was a lot to undo there, and in that environment, which like not all Christian schools are like that, obviously, but that's what my experience was. Um, so for me, I think honestly, some of my early influences were really negative, but I had a wonderful mom and a great dad. And my extended family is huge. My mom's the youngest of 8 kids. And so we always had these big family gatherings where I always felt loved and accepted. And my parents would work hard to help me catch up on things that I was behind on in school. So that was very stable, even though school was always a place of extreme discomfort and problems for me, like constantly until, like I said, about ninth or 10th grade. Yeah.
I'm going to poke a little bit about that because I think,
Please.
as you know, one of the things that I enjoy doing is trying to empower people, inspire people. Why do you believe you were unhappy in what continues to be one of the most wonderful places in the United States? Why were you unhappy as a young person?
I think you can see this played out in my life today. I just was a nonconformist, and that doesn't work very well in that type of environment. Um, I was in an environment where if you were anywhere outside of the norm, it was seen as sinful or bad. And it wasn't even that your behavior was, it was like you were a bad person, you're a bad influence. And so for me, I never accepted that. And I think that that made me just feel like I didn't want to be in that environment. I wanted to do something else. And so there was a lot of discomfort there. I think where it started to shift for me I was about 10th grade, I would say, is that I started to realize that I actually had a lot more control over my own actions and decisions than I realized. And that I wasn't a victim of what other people were doing to me, that I could actually make choices that were going to bring me more goodness and more freedom. Because I realized once I started behaving in a better way in the world and making better choices, people kind of left me alone. Like it was, I had to come to that realization that, oh, if do what you need to do in society, then you actually can do more things that you want to do. Like I graduated high school early, and I was able to get out of the environment that I didn't want to be in, early. And I think there was that autonomy and a realization of power, personal power. And then the books that I was reading also gave me a vision of other worlds and other things that I could do that weren't in this environment that was so uncomfortable to me.
Wow, so much to unpack there, Stacy. I love the comment on empowerment. Right? You found out that the better choices you made, the more empowered you became. I love that message. How did reading, well, first of all, how did you get into reading? And B, how did reading help shape your outlook on life?
I don't I'm sure I got into reading because my mom and dad would read to me. But I think the strongest memory I have is reading the Chronicles of Narnia when I was in second grade. And it was just this whole other world. I mean, I was escaping into this world, and that was just completely amazing. Now, let's be real, I didn't understand everything in that book. I was in second grade, but I got enough to like go to Narnia and have this experience. And as a young child, I would stay up really late. I had this waterbed with a cubby light on it, and after my parents would put me to bed, I would turn on the cubby light and read for hours. And they didn't know, of course. Well, they probably did. They probably did. Who knows? But I think that it felt kind of like a secret that I could just go and escape when everybody thought I was doing what I was supposed to be doing, and I could read. And then as I got older, I started to read more books that I would say are more in the social justice arena. They're, about racism, about poverty, about other cultures. And I started learning about what other worlds were like beyond my own. But probably also my biggest inspiration when I was in junior high was the Babysitters Club. because I don't know if you're familiar with this series, but it's this series
You need to
about these.
explain. You need to explain.
Okay.
I've read about it. You need to explain for our listeners.
So it's this group of like I think they were middle school girls that get together and form this babysitters club. And there's one character named Stacy that was from New York City, and I would read about her life and I dreamed of going and experiencing New York City, and she was blonde like me and an artist and stuff, and I was very much an artist. And I don't know, I think it was nice to be able to just escape and explore other things in a really safe way. Like I could just be there, and also it was non-judgmental. Nobody could be judging my experience, which was my experience every day, was just being judged constantly. So yeah, it was a great escape, and it really opened me up to possibility.
I want to go there. Possibility, Stacy. That's exactly where I was heading. You're one of the few people I've met that blew my mind away when you said you're location agnostic when we first met. And where I want to take this is what prompted you to say, look, I'm in a wonderful community. I'm in United States of America where most people want to come and thrive. I'm going to make a decision to leave and explore other worlds, other countries. I'm leaving. How did you get there?
Well, you're right. Boise is amazing. I have a huge community. My family, most of my family's there. It's a beautiful place. So I would never have I won't knock that at all. But again, I'll come back to, especially with children. We left before we had kids, but I think long term, as we considered what we wanted our life to be, um, Boise does not offer the diverse experiences that a place like the Boston area does. It's homogenous. It is one tracked. Like you kind of have a lot of not just like racially with ethnicity homogenous, but also in just like the type of people that there are. It's very much like you kind of do this one thing, and if you're outside of that, it's not really accepted. And and that's okay. I mean, I have again, we could end up back there, and I think it's an amazing place, but we wanted to raise our kids in different cultures, in different environments. We wanted to expose them to different languages. We wanted to create a sense of being at home in the world. We are so fortunate to have American citizenship and to always be able to come back. That is a privilege that we hold, and we don't take that lightly. But it's also a privilege to be here in Portugal and to be immersed in this community, and for my kids to learn the language of play, where you don't speak the same language as somebody, but you can just connect and be together. It's amazing, and I grow as a person because I'm exposed to so many different people, different viewpoints, different ways of seeing the world, even different pacing of conversation, and learning how to interact with somebody who speaks your language but doesn't share the same nonverbals and doesn't share the same language pacing, things like that. I think we just wanted to be challenged a bit more and grow. Where we'll end up, I don't know, but for this stage of our life, we're really happy with this choice.
I just love the fact that here is a very thoughtful, powerful woman who made a decision early on to say, I'm going to take control and do and explore what I want to do and explore. And I think that's just an incredible lesson for both men and women. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thanks, David.
Stacey, how did you? So, look, first and foremost, I say this to everyone I meet about the book. You have to meet Stacy Ennis. She is probably the most powerful writer in my top 5 of all time. How did you become such an incredible writer?
Well, I mean, we talked about reading, right? And I really, it begins there. So I think if anybody wants to hone their writing skill, you should always start with reading, like actually reading books, not just listening. You have to see the words and you have to experience how they interact on a page. Um, I mean, really, from age 7. At age 7, I wrote my first poem. I entered in a state poetry contest. I did not win, but I got second place, which was enough to encourage me. And pretty much from that time forward, I really did start studying writing. Like, how do I be a better writer? How do I make this my life? And then even in junior high, and high school, when we could take electives, I took every writing elective I could. I went on to get my bachelor's and my master's in writing. And then I just wrote a lot of stuff. I mean, I don't even know at this point. I think I'm probably at over 2,000 pieces of content that I've written so far. That's probably a conservative estimate, but I'm also probably not going to go back and count. That's like doing some of the rough math over the years. And I think it's those two connections, the reading and the writing. The other thing I'll say, because I worked in the world of magazines, I was forced to like work on a deadline. And so when you're in the magazine world, they needed the article yesterday. Whereas before that, it would take me 2 weeks to write something. And I didn't have that anymore. I had to go from 2 weeks to 2 hours. And so it forced me to step back and learn structure. So I actually went and studied a bunch of pieces of content and broke out the structure so I could have a repeatable formula for different types of writing. And that helped me a lot because I was forced to write quickly and I had to learn a way to do it that was systematic that I could come in and, replicate. So that practice and then continuing to read, it's so important.
Yeah, so my takeaway here is, first of all, work ethic. You had to work at it. You had to learn to be good at it. That takes a lot of work and concentration. The second takeaway is you're passionate about writing. Talk a
Yes.
little bit about passion.
It's interesting because I think you can be passionate about something, but it doesn't necessarily translate into doing something with it. I think more important to your point is that disciplined passion, showing up, doing the work. And then I think also, in many ways, when I look back on my journey, I was really fortunate because I started early and I wasn't, even though I was a teacher for a couple of years and grew my business while I was teaching, I didn't go through the, years or decades of another path that, as adults, our dreams get kind of stripped from us if we're not really actively clinging on to them. And I was fortunate in that didn't happen to me. I think it still could have. There were so many opportunities along the way where I could have given up. Now 13 years in business, there were many, many opportunities that I could have thrown my hands up. But I think because I believed, like I had such a strong vision for the life the life that I have today is the life I envisioned back then. And it was crystal clear to me. And so that helped, that discipline, just continuing to show up and do the work.
I just have to say, vision. It is exactly how we open the book. Without a vision, people perish, right? It's a biblical passage. And I so strongly love your comment, right? You had a vision and you executed it. You were disciplined and you worked hard to get there. I just love that about your story, Stacy. And I hope that listeners, that's one of the takeaways they get from this conversation today. Here is one of the most incredible writers I know I've ever read. She had a plan, she had a vision. So thank you for sharing that. I'm going to pivot a little bit. Stacy, you were the right person at a time in my life when I was thinking about how do I inspire young people? How do I take a story of challenge and turn it into hope and aspiration? And what I want to ask you about is one of the things that you were incredible at is getting inside the person, understanding them. And one of the words that you used to say to me daily was empathy. And it stuck with me. Were you blessed with the ability to truly be inside someone and understand them? Or is this something you had to learn? Talk to me about that.
Wow, I don't know, David, actually. I don't think anybody's ever asked me that question. I will say that throughout my whole life, I've been naturally attracted to knowing other people and just hearing them and seeing them. Even as a kid, my mom talks about how we'd be at the grocery store and I would strike up a conversation with the person next to me and ask them about their life and, all this stuff. My kids actually do that now, which is really interesting. But I think also, actually, as I reflect on this, though, I will say that I changed a lot when we moved to our first country, to the Dominican Republic. And I went from this really, again, homogenous, not to be repetitive, but it was environment, into a place where I was, usually, other than my husband, the only white person in the space. And it was a very uncomfortable, and it forced me to experience a totally different way of being in the world. And I got yelled at a lot. I got, people would kind of chase me down the street. I mean, it was constant. And sometimes it was honestly kind of scary because I would be alone. And so I loved actually living there. It was an amazing experience in so many ways. But I also really got to understand how to be uncomfortable. And I think also that helped me develop a want to understand other people. And I would say while we were there, because we were working at an international school, I was a teacher at the time, we had an opportunity to get to know the like high rollers in society there because they sent their kids there. But the people that I connected with most were the cleaner at our school and the fruit vendor on the street, who we would have broken conversations with every day. When we moved from the DR, the cleaner at the school came over to our house and we spoke for an hour in Spanish. I'm sure my grammar was terrible, but I learned so much from them, and grew so much just hearing their stories. I definitely completely changed me. I was a changed person for sure after living there.
So part of this is empathy.
Mm-hmm.
Part of this is understanding. Part of this is perspective. And I love that, right? You have this incredible ability to listen, to understand the person, and convey so many incredible emotions and feelings about the person because you understand, you have that perspective. So it's just another powerful lesson from my relationship with you that I take away from you. Stacy, so I'm sitting here listening to a formidable person who inspires me. And I want to take this into a very personal track here. Here is Stacy Ennis, who is just doing remarkable things in her career and her personal life. She's a mother, she's an entrepreneur, world traveler, writer. What advice would you give to Stacy Ennis, who's 12 years old? What would you say to her?
Hmm. I I think I would tell her to anchor within herself and to not worry so much about the rest of the world and the opinions of her that they have. Um, a young woman and a young man, of course, but I don't have that experience to speak to. But as a young woman, that age, 12, is so hard. You are really coming into the world to see that your external appearance is what is valued mostly. You're starting to learn about gender roles. You're starting to internalize what other people are saying to you because, and this is, I would say, any woman who's listening to this, I think is probably nodding her head right now. I would say this is very much a shared experience by most women. Um, and self-confidence with young, young preteen, teen women, girls, is a real challenge. And I would say it was not until my mid to late 20s that I regained the confidence that I lost when I was a teen. And I would love for any young woman or young man watching this to just remember that they are worthy and smart and capable. And even if you have a teacher that breaks your confidence, or a bully, or you make a mistake, that it doesn't decrease your worth. You're just a human, right? That made that mistake, and you can make a different choice next time. And you have everything within you that you need if you can find that self agency and make the decisions that are going to take you on a path that will lead you to where you actually want to be down the road.
How do you define self-agency?
Hmm. I think it's making decisions for, well, I don't think we ever make decisions in true isolation of other people, right? Like our decisions impact others. But I think when you have self agency, you make the right decision, the best decision that you can, based on what is the true path for you versus letting other people's input or expectations determine your path, like where you're going to go next. And I think, this is, I'm, there's so many different experiences of this based on your cultural upbringing, your socioeconomic class, your city, even your school system. And we're all faced with some people are faced with pressure to go, this particular college route, where some people see their future, as in your situation, David, that there's a future that is sitting on a stoop and not necessarily living a full life, and that is the expectation that you will go that direction. But I hope that anybody who really embraces self-agency knows that they actually get to decide what direction they go and choose the path that's true for them.
Love that. What role does faith play in your life, Stacy, or has it played place today?
Yeah, I wouldn't want my sharing my experience in the Christian system to be a anything against religion at all, because I mean you can even see I'm wearing my shirt from my trip to Fatima, which is one of the Catholic pilgrimage sites here in Portugal. Um, I would say it's complicated. I very much believe in God, and He's definitely been with me along my journey. But I think also because I had such challenging experiences within various facets of Christianity. I was in the Catholic Church for a while, and then in the Protestant Church, and then back in the Catholic Church. Um, it doesn't really feel that important to me what religion I embrace, but rather that I am a moral person who lives by the values that I was raised with, and that are really mostly biblical values, I would say. Um, and maybe some of them are my interpretation of those biblical values, but I think nonetheless anchoring in goodness and in putting good into the world and doing good to other people. So I would say it has a big part in my life. It's not in the way that I was raised to have it be a big part in my life, if that makes sense.
Yep, helpful. All right, another personal one. As you know Samanda well, we are very close. We spend a lot of time together with our children. I want to ask you about the importance of your family, in particular, marriage. You talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, my relationship with my husband is absolutely central to everything. Like any marriage, we've been together. We were trying to figure it out the other day. I think it's been 15 years now, at this point, and I think married for 12, almost 12. Yeah, 11. I'm honestly not sure. I should know that. A long time. And he's a stay-at-home dad and has been for 9 years. he it's never perfect. No marriage is perfect, but we respect each other so much, and he has really dedicated his life to our family with no expectation of anything in return. He didn't have huge career ambitions, I would say, other than he loves to teach, and maybe he'll go back down that path again. He has a master's in education. But all he really, I think, aspired to, and I don't say all in a diminutive way, it's just that I think he did not have a strong family growing up. And so for him, having a family that is whole and loving and supportive, that was his dream. And so we make that happen together for our children. Um, and we are very much a tight family unit. He's a cyclist, and he's always getting invited to go on these trips and rides. And he's like, I just want to be home. We just want to be together. And it doesn't mean we don't have our own interests and we don't do things separately, because I think that's important too. Um, but for us, it's that family unit is the anchor through which everything else is possible.
Thank you for sharing that, Stacy. I wholeheartedly agree with you. I think that, a lot of the issues that we see today in the United States of America, societal issues that we're seeing today, this is my personal perspective. It is truly because I believe that the foundational element in society is family and faith. And I think a lot of the family structures, in particular, Hispanic, African American families, it's breaking.
Mm.
And I think that, especially as I grew up, I saw that a lot of the single parent home, the kids that were raised in family homes, especially single moms who were working 2, 3 jobs, kids were raising themselves by themselves, right? And so when the family breaks down, in my humble opinion, other things break in society. So I appreciate you sharing that. I think that family is an essential element of a healthy society.
I agree with you. And I think also that family can take different shapes. My husband was really fortunate that he had amazing grandparents that really stepped in and played that role for him. And I think, there's a breakdown across all different cultures in the family. And I think also in the value that we place on family. Um, and I will say, in my own journey, being in business now 13 years, I had to come to an awareness of that need to disconnect, to be present, to not be working all the time. That was a journey for me. And I really feel like us living abroad has really helped that, because um, there's a lot of great things about American culture, but there are some things that are really harmful too, like this tendency toward depletion, this almost glorification of depletion, um, in sacrifice of everything else, including your marriage and your family. And we're now in a culture, and I hope I would have come, I know I would have come to this anyway, but I think we're in a culture here that, people shut their restaurants for 2 months out of the year so they can be with their families. People take the entire month of August off to be with their families. And that's just an expectation. It's not like you add it on at the end of your workday. It's built into your life.
So glad you share that. It is, we could spend hours talking about this topic, family. This is one of the areas where I encourage people to get perspective on, right? Family, right? Travel if you need to, but understand the importance of family. So I'm glad you shared that, because I share your sentiment and perspective. Stacey, I'm going to ask you 2 more personal questions. The first one is around this notion here in the United States, especially around social justice, and teaching kids about equity, et cetera. As you know, I have very strong opinions on this topic, because I believe in self-agency very much the way you do. Um, is there is there anything you would share to folks that are listening, in particular, well, anyone listening or watching? What would you share, given your world travels and awesome perspective around the difference in the United States and other countries around quote unquote social justice and equity? How would you respond to them if they were to ask you the question around America is not equitable, how do we fix it? How would you respond to that?
You know, I um I I know that you and I have some aligned but maybe differences in how we see the United States, its current status. But I respect so much you're so intelligent and so thoughtful in the way that you see things. For me, I do see a brokenness in the U.S. That is going to take a lot of intentionality to overcome. And I see it with a different experience though, because I have distance now. We've been here for almost 3 years. And I also have to recognize, and I think about this all the time, that I'm not getting to experience firsthand because I'm not there right now. So everything is filtered for me through friends, through media, and I try to be really diverse in the media that I take in. But one thing I will say is that, you know, our everyday life here is so different because we are the foreigners here, but we're privileged foreigners, and that's a very different thing than, you know, being a refugee or, you know, having coming from poverty or coming from some other level of disadvantage. So I cannot speak to that. But one thing I will say is that because we are in this environment where there's so much diversity across all levels. I mean, even my son's school, we have wide socioeconomic diversity, we have wide racial ethnic diversity, we have different countries, we have different languages. It's so beautiful to see such diversity come together. And I think there is so much pain in the US right now that I don't really know how to even speak to that at this point. But I see it. I see the pain. And I respect the pain that people feel. I think to your point, it's like, what do we do from there? And I'm also speaking from a totally different perspective as somebody who I do experience levels of discrimination because I'm a woman, but I'm not a woman of color. I'm not, you know, I don't have that experience. So what I have to do is trust people like you or people like my friends that I respect, and I have to take that in and respect the individual experiences that people have with love. And as a student, as a, you know, somebody who just wants to grow and like put good people into the world through my kids, that's my goal. You know,
We share that goal. That
yes.
is my greatest legacy, my 2 children. So
yeah, you're doing a great job with those two.
Thank you. Right back at you. So last question, and you can think about this, take a minute or so. I like to wrap up the series with, what is your purpose?
You know, it's interesting, since you sent me some of these questions ahead of time, I got to think about this. And I think that at the core of it, if I even connect my family life and the work that I do, it's growing impact makers. It's growing people that are putting good into the world. David, the reason that I was so excited about your story and you as a human and your family is because you're putting so much good into the world through sharing your story, which is not an easy story to share. And through these things like this podcast that you're doing, that is truly an effort to reach young people and to lift them up and to make a difference in the world. I got to be part of that. I mean, I get goosebumps even thinking about that. So that's one side of it. And then the other side of it is like, how do I put good into the world through my own work and put good into the world through my children and my community? That is my mission, because I feel like I can only do so much myself, but if I can grow more people to put good into the world, then it's going to have this amazing ripple effect that hopefully will last for generations.
Putting good people into the world and helping good people grow in the world. Man, powerful. Thank you for joining us today. I'm just grateful for you, Stacy, for making the time to join us. You are honestly one of the most remarkable people I know. I get emotional talking about you, man. You're awesome. So thank you, Stacy. Thanks everybody for joining us today. Grit Machine DNA, check us out, and check out Stacy Ennis writing. She's an author, she's a writer, she's an entrepreneur, she's a mom, and more importantly, she's a powerful, powerful, powerful person. So thank you for joining us, Stacy.
David, thank you so much. I just adore you and your family, and I'm so appreciative of this conversation.
We'll talk soon.
Si vives día a día en un abismo de dolor y buscas solución a tus problemas, busca del Señor y sigue su camino, y pronto nacerá la paz en tu corazón, y con la paz del Señor Señor, yo he vencido mi temor y yo vivo victorioso por su amor. Y con la paz del Señor, yo he vencido mi temor y yo vivo victorioso por su amor. Si vives día a día en un abismo de dolor y buscas solución a tus problemas, busca del Señor y sigue su